Hi, I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 108 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. Now, a couple of months back, last year, I did a video on how I claimed the Amiga 3000 was one of the best Amigas that Commodore ever produced, and I still absolutely believe that. I think it's one of the most beautiful Amigas that they produced, maybe only surpassed by the original Amiga 1000, and with the 030 chip running it up to 25 megahertz, 16 megs of fast RAM, 2 megs of chip, the ECS chipset, and reasonably fast SCSI, it made for a really, really nice workstation. But mine died last year, and it was probably my fault. See, I did a video on the A2088 bridge board. Here's a link to that one right there. Make sure you watch that. And I did that in the Amiga 3000. At the time, I had my A3640 accelerator card in there, which was the card that came with the Amiga 4000. That runs a little hot. Here's my mistake. When I finished filming the video, I walked out to edit it, left my Amiga 3000 on, and didn't come back in my studio for 5 days. With the 3640 in there, what an idiot, what an idiot. When I came back to the studio, there was still a display on the screen. I could still see it, but the Amiga 3000 was literally radiating heat. I shut her down, and she'd never boot again with that 3640 card in there. I think it might have toasted the card. If I could even get the Amiga 3000 booted again in 030 mode, it would guru within 3 to 4 minutes. It'd come up, it'd act okay, and then boom, it'd guru. So I opened her up, and the gals were, the little chips in there, were exceptionally hot, like burn your finger if you touch them hot. So I'd obviously fried my board. No doubt about it, my fault. Now, I have a second Amiga 3000 motherboard. It's my original 16 megahertz board. That doesn't boot properly either. And I was thinking, I could steal the gals off of there and maybe solder them in and maybe get it to work again. But then I remember hearing about Chucky Hertels. You can see a picture of Chucky right there. He created the Re-Amiga 3000 board, which is a brand new board based on the Amiga 3000. He reverse engineered it and made some modifications to it. And I thought, maybe I'll check that out, see what's up with that. So after I got a quote from Chucky back in November of 2020, I shipped my board out to him in November of 2020. He said he was about a month out in getting boards done. Well, I just got mine back in the middle of August. So, I know in Sweden winters are really long, but I didn't realize that they actually had some kind of time warping effect that made 1 month turn into 8. Just kidding, Chucky. Now, I unwrapped the box as soon as it got here, and I did find that a stray capacitor had fallen off, and I tracked it down to a capacitor just to the left of the little LEDs on the Amiga 3000 there. The leg had just broken off. So I went out, bought a new capacitor, figured it just broke off in shipping, got that resoldered on. I also noticed that the board was absolutely sticky with flux to the point where you'd touch it and flux, and I'd have to go wash my hands. So I wish he would have washed it a little better, but c'est la vie. Let's take a look at the board itself. Let's take a closer look at this lovely little Re-Amiga 3000 board. So first of all, of course, as I mentioned, it was created by our good friend John Chucky Hertel in Sweden, and he's got some thank yous here to some nice people who helped him on the project. Basically what we're doing is we're taking all of the chips from the old Amiga 3000 and putting them in here in a new package with some enhancements. We've still got our standard 68882. We've still got our regular Ramsey chip here. We've still got our 25 megahertz 030 chip. But look here, where the zip RAM used to be. This is now a couple of nice 8 megabyte SIM chips. And any of you who are used to putting in zip RAM into your Amiga 3000, this is an absolute blessing. This is just a world of difference. We see that we've got a little change in the ROM department. Here, I've got my 3.2 ROMs in here, but there's also a jumper that allows you to enable a ROM switcher. So you can switch between, say, 2.05 and 3.2 ROMs if you want to. It's kind of cool. This space for rent. John's got a sense of humor. That's nice. Over here in the SCSI department, we have, of course, floppy, our 50-pin SCSI, but there's this extra header here that if you want to, you can populate and put a SCSI connector in there, a smaller SCSI connector. With the keyboard connector right here, you have the option to have either the standard, larger Amiga 2000 style keyboard connector, or it also has the pin headers underneath for the smaller PS2 looking Amiga 4000 connector, which is kind of a cool feature. Now over here we have a couple of fan headers. Now we can put some 3-pin connectors on here, and there's a 5-volt and then there's a 12-volt fan connector if you want to keep it cool. And we've also got the same fan headers over on this side, just underneath this little chip right here. There's our 12-volt and 5-volt. I'm going to go ahead and solder some headers on there just to be on the safe side. Over here, things have changed a little bit. It now has some little LEDs right on here that light up nice and prettily and show you your power, your hard drive access, things like that. The standard LED header is still here, but you see it's not populated with pin headers, so I bought some pin headers and I'm going to solder those in place, which will be kind of nice. Our standard 2 megabytes of chip RAM is still here, all of it socketed in now instead of being, just 8 sockets. Now there's a total of 16 sockets for the RAM. Here's our place for our lovely Agnes chip, 2 megabyte Agnes. Denise here. Now, funny story about this. I got the board back from John, hooked it up. I said, where are all my display modes? I can't see any, super high res modes or anything like that. What on earth is going on? So I took a look at the chip, and he'd accidentally popped in an OCS chip instead of an ECS chip. So I think he just grabbed it off the wrong pile and threw in the wrong chip. Luckily, I do have a spare ECS Denise who went in there and she works fine, and John is sending me back my original, so kudos to him for that. Here I've put on a battery for the real-time clock. The way it comes is this is just completely blank under here with just a spot to put one of these standard 2032 batteries in here. So you'll need to order one of these little guys to put on here. I got mine from Retro Rewind. All the rest of our happy little chips here. Here's our Amber chip controlling our VGA. Here is our RGB connector right here. All in all, she's a beautiful motherboard that adds just a couple of new extra features. So far, she's fitting into the case very, very nicely. Everything just slotted into place just fine. I don't think I'm going to have any problems with that. And of course, I've got my masterful LED hack job that I did because I couldn't find any LED lights that actually matched the size of the Amiga 3000s. But I tested them out and they work okay, and once they're installed, they look fine. I am using a little extension cable here so I can get a little extra length on them because it's a pretty tight squeeze otherwise. She's truly lovely, isn't she? That is a good looking board, and Chucky did a fantastic job on it. But so after this, everything in the world was peaches and cream, right? Absolutely everything worked perfectly the minute I plugged it in. Well, now see, this is me. This is Doug, guys, so no. The first thing I noticed is that the RGB port was not working well. Of course, the Amiga 3000s, like you just saw, have both a VGA port, which gives you a nice non-interlaced 31 kilohertz signal, next to the standard 23-pin RGB port. Now, I plugged mine in, SCART cable to SCART to HDMI converter, displays it fine on this monitor here. Works fine on all my Amigas. It came up this purple color when I was looking at it on the screen. So I thought, okay, I sent a picture of it to Chucky and we talked about it. Must be a loose solder connection or something like that on the header. He said it worked fine for him. So I went in, took it apart, and just looked at all the solder joints. They looked fine. There were a couple of them that were a little shady. I reflowed the solder on all the connections, put a little more solder on the two connections that looked a little fishy, did a continuity check on them, and the continuity check was fine. Signals passed right through. Well, now, when I plugged it in, the RGB port, everything came up a deep cyan color, which was, albeit quite pretty, but it wasn't right. Then I noticed that sometimes if I would kind of move the little connector a little bit on the back, it would come up and it would look okay. It'd be fine, and you just kind of have to hold it. So I knew something was wrong, and it absolutely felt like it was a connection issue. Well, I checked all the connections again, rock solid. That little RGB thing was on there, rock solid. All the pins connecting perfectly. What gives? I took out my grandfather's loop from 1940. It's my favorite one. Open sesame. There it is. It's my favorite one. He used to use it for looking at negatives and slides when he used to shoot film when he was alive. So I took this and I started checking out everything on the board, all the traces around the RGB. And I found this little dab of solder about the size of literally the head of a pin that was on these two traces, about an inch below the RGB port. I thought, I caught you. And piece of solder, when he was soldering something, must have just jumped and melted itself in. I used a little pick and ting, picked that off. Checked the traces. They looked like they were intact, but it looked like the piece of solder could have easily been shorting those two traces. Turn the machine on, boom, beautiful RGB signal, absolutely glorious. I fixed the problem, right? Well, no, because 24 hours later, black screen on RGB. Again, VGA, perfect. RGB, nothing. Then, randomly, it might start working again. I'd turn it on, hey, RGB, and it'd work for the rest of, whatever session I'm doing. The RGB would be perfectly fine. Try it again an hour later, nothing, black screen. So you might be asking why I'm so worried about the RGB connection, considering VGA works flawlessly 100% of the time and I never had an issue. Hook it up to my monitor, perfect. Well, first off, because I paid $600 in cold hard American cash to Chucky, and I rightfully expect these things to work, all right? Second, my plan for this is to use my DC TV, one of these little units that plugs into the RGB port, and they will allow your Amiga to produce multi-million color NTSC pictures that are absolutely mind-blowing. At least they were back in the day. You can see a video I did of the DC TV back a couple of years ago that desperately needs updating. I need to do a part 2 to that, and I will. Well, I spent hours with my loop and then with my digital magnifier looking for broken traces, looking for solder that wasn't quite right, and it just all looked perfect. Till I got over in the corner. It's on the upper left, and I'll see if I can put a picture up from the board here. But there's some resistors that some of the RGB traces seemed to go over to, and the whole area was just soaked in flux. So I thought, I'm going to clean that off just to see what happens. Little IPA for the motherboard, a little IPA for Doug, a little more IPA for the motherboard. And then I took my toothbrush and started scrubbing away the flux like we've done a million times. Well, I looked down, one of the resistors was gone. What the heck? How can a toothbrush kill a resistor? Well, I looked, and there's the top half of the resistor just sitting half an inch away upside down. What the heck? The resistor's literally broken in half. So I took my tweezers, I took the little tiny resistor, I repositioned it on the solder, just held it, put it right in place, booted up the Amiga, RGB was back. Turned it off, turned it on, RGB was back. Problem solved, right? It was a resistor that had broken and was maybe just partially, maybe occasionally making a short connection. So for a day, this is working perfect. I solder a resistor back in there every day. RGB, fine, fine, fine. And then, black screen on it again. I have no idea what's going on. Black screen. I give up. I don't have time for this. I'll work on it another time. I put the Amiga together, make sure the motherboard's in there nice and tight, put all the parts in there, get the case top put on. Figured, what the heck, I'll just use it in VGA mode for this video. Switch it over to RGB. RGB works fine. Absolutely rock solid. Wiggle the connector, rock solid. Turn it on and off 1,000 times. The RGB's been rock solid ever since. I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense, but I also don't trust it. I know it's going to go out again. I would be tempted to send it back to Chucky for warranty repairs. I absolutely guarantee you he would be happy to look at the board and figure out why the RGB's not working. But we're talking shipping over there and shipping back from Sweden. I'd be out $150 just in shipping costs. So I think I'll just try and fix it myself. Now, I'd already mentioned the Denise chip slip up where he accidentally put an OCS Denise chip in there. You know, that problem solved. It's in ECS mode now with my chip. So I'm using the machine, mostly in VGA mode because that's what's reliable. And I get Workbench 3.2 up and running. Got my 3.2 ROMs from AmigaStore.eu, bloop, bloop, put them in there, boom, fine. Load Workbench or load Amiga OS 3.2 onto a nice 32 gig CF, onto a nice 32 gig SD card in my SD to SCSI. Absolutely perfect. Using it for a day or two, then turn it off, do something else, turn it back on, yellow screen. You know, the flashing yellow. All right, what's up here? Off and on again. It tries to boot, gets halfway booted, chokes. What the heck? Turn it off, yellow screen when I try to boot it up. Now, I'm smart enough to know a yellow screen often means ROM, so after a little troubleshooting, I took out my AmigaStore.eu 3.2 ROMs that had been working fine for 2 or 3 days, put them aside, put in my Amiga OS 3.14 ROMs, comes up fine, absolutely perfect, flawless. Put my 3.2 ROMs back in there, yellow screen. The ROMs died. 2 or 3 days of use, the ROMs died. So they were probably flaky to begin with, used ones from AmigaStore.eu, and they just gave up the ghost. Now, putting my Amiga OS 3.14 ROMs in there meant I had to reinstall the operating system so I could load all the modules and everything, and I did that. Works fine with 3.14 ROMs and Amiga OS 3.2. Now, this leads me to the fourth issue that I had with it, and in some ways, the one that pisses me off the most. So, I'm used to using MMU library on most of my Amigas that don't have some kind of flash ROM utility. MMU library lets you use the MMU to map your ROM into fast memory, improves performance fairly dramatically in some cases. It also can relate to the 030 and 040 libraries that we need to use for Amiga OS 3.2. I use it all the time. Amiga 1200, Amiga 4000, Amiga 2000s, Amiga 1000. No, I don't use it because it doesn't have an MMU. But the other Amigas, I do use it in. So I load the MMU libraries like I've done 1,000 times. Amiga locks up. On boot, black screen. What the heck? Any time this goes to use the MMU, total lockup. I don't care if it's just using the 68030 library that uses the MMU, lockup. I don't care if I try to manually run the MapROM program, lockup. Every single time I use the MMU. Here's what I suspect. I suspect, just like with my OCS Denise chip that slipped in here, that Chucky maybe didn't use the parts from my Amiga 3000 motherboard and maybe just picks them off a shelf. Oh, here's an 030, 25 megahertz, we'll stick it in. And he may have slipped on an 030 with a bad MMU. Mine was not bad, I will guarantee you that, because I used that Amiga 3000 for months and I used MMU library on it. No problem at all. And sadly, even if he sent me another 030, it's a lot harder to replace a soldered in 030 than it is a socketed Denise chip. So now things still work okay. I just turn off the warning messages that pop up about the 030 library not being loaded, and I can't use anything to do with the MMU. That's life, but it functions. I will try one of the 030 libraries that don't use the MMU, see how it reacts. We'll see. So there were some issues with the Re-Amiga when it came back to me. You know, there's the Denise issue, whatever, capacitor issue and resistor issue, got them fixed. RGB issue, I don't know. And the MMU issue, that pisses me off. But does that mean she doesn't work? No, she works. She's flippin' rock solid. I've got her loaded up with all my favorite programs. This is Image Effects from our friends at AEON, and this is my logo that Kevin Saunders did for me for Amiga Art Contest 2021, which you all need to send me more submissions for. It's going on until October 11th. Works absolutely fine. Loaded the machine up with Art Department Professional, Personal Paint, bunch of word processors, bunch of games, everything flawless, just like you'd expect it to work. So how fast is this little guy? Well, I'm obligated by international law and the Geneva Convention to run sysinfo and take a look at the speeds. So we're going to give her a little run here. And what do we come up with? 0.91% of the speed of an Amiga 3000 25 megahertz. It's actually running slower. Now, why is that? Well, I'll tell you why. And that's because the SIM chips that are used in here work in page mode instead of static column mode, like some of the zip chips can use. That automatically makes the Amiga about 10% slower than it theoretically could be. But that's life. Now, this Amiga is actually slower in some ways than my Amiga 600 that we just took a look at a week ago. Take a look at the video right there. With its Furia 020 running at about 30-35 megahertz. It's also slower than my Amiga 1000 right there with the classic 520 accelerator, which gives it 8 megabytes of RAM, a 68020 running at about 28 megahertz. Now, how could that be? This is an 030 25 megahertz. It all relates to the RAM speed. The Amiga 1000, I mean, it's from 1991. It addresses its RAM slower than these newer accelerators, and that's just a fact of life. The RAM chips are faster now. The logic that they use to address them is faster, more optimized. It just gets to the memory a lot faster and transfers it a lot faster, making the scores and making the actual feel of it faster than my Amiga 3000. Now, chip RAM is addressed faster on the Amiga 3000 because it has more bandwidth to the actual chips than like the Amiga 1000 or even the Amiga 600. So in a lot of ways, when you're using it day to day, they feel about the same. This feels about as fast as using the other machines. But when I'm doing something like processing an image, rescaling something, my Amiga 600 and even my Amiga 1000, they actually feel noticeably faster than this. But that's okay. Now, the solution to this would be to put a CPU accelerator in the CPU slot in here that has its own onboard RAM. Like you take my Warp engine from my Amiga 4000, you throw it in here, this thing's gonna just smoke everybody right there. Now, as far as a hard drive, I've got the SCSI to SD from Inertial Computing. I've got Rev 6 in here. Rev 6 is theoretically about 10 megabytes per second maximum speed, where the Rev 5 board is theoretical maximum about 2.5 megabytes per second. We're going to take a look here. This claims it's working at 6.5 megabytes per second on the work drive, and that should come in about 3.3. I think this is more realistic, 3.3, 3.4 megabytes per second. Let me tell you a bit about why that is. Now, if you get an Amiga 3000 right out of the box and put a Rev 6 board in here for SCSI to SD, you're only going to get about 2.1 megabytes per second, maybe less than that. What you need to do is you need to change the mode of your Amiga 3000, and you download this cool utility called SCSI Prefs. I'll have a link to it. It's on AmiNet. SCSI Prefs lets you set synchronous transfer mode. Put a check mark there, click save. It saves it to a special onboard memory that is backed up by the battery backed up clock if you have one. If you don't have a clock, you need to put the command line version of this in your startup sequence, tell it to turn on synchronous transfer every time. This will bring your hard drive speed from 1.6 to 2 megabytes per second up to 3 to 3.4 megabytes per second. Absolutely worth doing. So I've got this thing running fairly well in stock situation right here. I did put a CD-ROM on the side here. Works absolutely perfect under Amiga OS 3.2. Boom, just like that. What else am I going to do with this? Am I done? Come on, you guys know me. You know I'm not done. This little guy is getting one of my A2065 Ethernet cards. They're actually pretty good cards. They do the job for getting this online and getting on AmiNet, FTPing, that kind of thing. That's going to go in here. I've got this Blue Ribbon Soundworks sound card. That's not quite it's not a 16-bit sound card, but it uses these, it's got its own 68,000 chip. It uses these digitized samples. I've never even had it in a machine. I may try it out, see what it can do. I'd love to put my A2386 bridge board in here that doesn't quite work properly. I've got to take a look and see. I think there's some damaged traces from the battery, but I'd love to get that up and running and working in here again like I had it back in 91 and 92. So my Amiga 3000's back, is working fantastic. I'm back in, I've returned, I've gone back in time to 1992, and I'm just happy as a little clam. I'll figure out the RGB issue. I know I will. I can live with the MMU issue. I'd rather not, but you know, who knows? After using it for the past week, I remember why I did not upgrade to the Amiga 1200 or the Amiga 4000 back in 93 and 94. So I was tempted, but I kept thinking, I got this beautiful Amiga 3000. It does everything I need. I was thinking I'd getting a nice RTG graphics card for it, you know, that's superior to AGA in some ways. I didn't have any reason to upgrade. Just love it. So I want to use this as one of my standard Amigas that I've got on the bench all the time, like my Amiga 4000, like my Checkmate 1500, like my Amiga 1000. But something's got to go. I think I got to throw something in here in the trash to get rid of to open up some space. Let's see, what can go directly into the trash to make room for the Amiga 3000 on the bench? So if you want to upgrade your Amiga 3000, if you've got some bad components on it, it's not working right, Chucky sells the Reamiga board for about 80 euros plus shipping, okay? Right now, at the moment, I don't think he's taken on any more challenges of repopulating the boards. He's just too busy. But you can talk to him about it. I mean, maybe he'll just put you on a waiting list. But if you can find somebody to do it, or you have the skills to do it yourself, I don't. It's a beautiful way to preserve your Amiga 3000. Now, if your Amiga 3000 is already working fine, this is not going to give you any magical features that make it, you know, oh God, I gotta have it. No, it doesn't. It's a better version of the Amiga 3000 board. But if you got a board that's working fine, just recap it, clean it up. It'll last you another 20, 30 years, I hope. Huge thanks to my wonderful patrons. Here's a nice Ham 6 picture that I modified on my Amiga 3000 from an original JPEG image. This is Lake on a mountain just north of Tucson called Rose Canyon Lake. Huge thanks to my latest patron, Bunny Named Sunny. I challenge all of you to come up with a cooler name than that. And no, Paulie, your YouTube name does not count. If you'd like to help support the channel and show up in this coveted list, just drop by to patreon.com/10mark, and for as little as $2 a month, you can really help out the show. Thanks for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter if possible. Comment below, tell me your memories of the Amiga 3000, tell me how you've upgraded it. I love to hear stories in the comments about your own equipment. Check out my new Instagram account too. The links are right in the description. Please don't forget that we're about a month away from the Amiga Art Contest 2021. You saw the screen up here, and oh, there's another one, a high resolution version. Your original Amiga artwork, your Amiga photography you've edited on the Amiga, 3D images, mod music, or any other kind of Amiga-oriented music, and animations this year. Please submit them. I need more. We've got about a month before the contest closes up, and I really need more submissions. Thanks, everybody. But for now, this is Doug from 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out to play some of that brand new Dread demo that just dropped today. Check it out. Links are in the description. Ooh, look at that smooth movement on an 030. Absolutely perfect. Die, die, die! And you guys thought I was a pacifist.